conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. We got our good friends Greg, aka Weenie, and the lovely Bryce here today. Joining us in about 30 minutes will be Mark again, and Dave will be on here. And we'll also get a Dave's Ukraine update today. But don't worry, don't get depressed. Weenie's not talking about the stock market today. We have him here because the topic of today is college worth it? And I think it's a great conversation to have today, especially when Professor Dave and Professor Mark comes on. But Harold here is an educator. We'll let him give you a little bit of his background in education so you can understand why he has a strong opinion on this. And then, of course, we have Winnie and Bryce, who are college graduates. So they've attended college. And then you have me. And if you see my background go, you know I got more degrees than a thermometer. So before we get started, I want Harold to kind of give us, tell us about your educational background, and then Winnie and Bryce kind of give us a brief summary of your scholastic journey.
Well, first of all, thanks, John. I appreciate it, and again, thanks, Winnie and Bryce. I'm still having a problem with this whole Winnie thing, but that's a whole nother story.
Call me whatever you
want. My journey actually out of high school began with the University of Florida, where I got a bachelor's in statistics. I then came back home to attend Florida International University, where I have a master's of arts in religious studies, a master's in business administration. I also attended the Florida Center for Theological Studies, which I have an MDiv from as well. And I began that doctoral journey, and I'm all but dissertation in that regards. But when I look at education, I know what the cost of my education was or has been. However, what I don't know is what is the cost of ignorance. We can talk about college education all day long, but in this journey that we look at, when we talk about the value of it, we have to also explain, well, what is the cost of not knowing certain things that we definitely need a foundation on to do what we endeavor to do. After getting all of those degrees, I end up going back to, and I have a specialist in ed leadership from Florida National University as well. So I've been a school teacher, I've been an administrator, and then I went back to be a special education teacher, working with those children living with disabilities. And when I think about what the value or cost of education is, I do value it highly. I'm a lifelong learner. And before I continue, I want to step back and let our two special guests kind of expound on their current journeys, respectively.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first, Bryce?
Go first.
All right. I think that if you have the opportunity to, more education is almost always better. But each person's situation is different. The cost of education is a lot higher than what it used to be. And it depends on what your goals are, too. I think if you have the ability to go to college, you should, not just for what you might learn but more so for like the experiences that you'll have, the connections and people that you meet. I think that's even more valuable than the education itself, because you could just, do an online course if you wanted to for a lot of things. You might not get the same value, but you don't get the same experiences. So that's going to be kind of my base case, and I'll expand upon that later.
What were your experiences?
Just, hanging out with friends, the swim team, meeting different types of people. I don't think if I didn't go to college and I just started working right away, I would have, met and found great people. But my network wouldn't be as large. That's basically the gist of it. I have a bachelor's in business analytics as well.
Okay.
That sounds appropriate.
Yeah.
That's those numbers.
Yeah. My college experience was probably pretty similar to Greg's because, well, we went to school together, and so we hung out together like every day for 4 years. And still continue to.
Yep.
But I went to school. I got a bachelor's in women's and gender studies and a minor in social justice. I had a good experience at school. I think the school that I chose was a little too expensive for me.
Hamlin University's
I
pretty
think
expensive.
I think I could have had a very similar experience going to a more affordable college. I do think higher education is important, and getting to know a bunch of different people, learning what you want to learn,
Sports,
swimming,
that's
getting
a lot of
involved
fun.
in sports is fun.
That's how we met. We were both sprinters in the same lane. We're
Yes.
going for it. I was
Yeah.
like, well, we're spending all this time together. Might as well date.
That's why he decided to date you. He knew he could catch you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So my question for all three of you was, what age did you attend college?
18. It was pretty standard for
18.
us. But I would do it if I had not done it. Like,
No, I got you. I'm leading into something. So both of you, 18, right out of high school. What about you, Harold?
Same.
So I'm of a different branch. Yes, I have a bachelor's in organizational psychology and a master's in healthcare management and a master's in human services. I didn't get my first degree till I was 32 years old. I didn't go to college until I was 32 years old. I had done a lot of stuff between 18 and 32. And I think, so the question says, is college worth it? And it's a question that gets people to think about other things. But I think the question that I always ask is, because like when Bryce, you said you could have went to a more affordable college. I think when people say, is college worth it, is what it costs to get that education and what it might cost you afterwards. When I went to college, I was financially stable. I was 32. It wasn't a big hindrance for me. I didn't come out of college with a whole bunch of debt. When I attempted to go to college at 18, I dropped out in the first year. It just wasn't for me. I was never pressured to go to college. I know a lot of people are pressured to go to college, and everybody just has a different journey when it comes to when they should go to college. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, most definitely. And my journey was interesting because my father was not a fan of college. I mean, he, at 16 years old, graduated from high school. He was offered a football scholarship to go to college, and he turned it down and decided he was just going to work because he had skills that he had learned and acquired in his young age or in his youth that he was able to basically, create a good and, acceptable life for himself. And when I was going through high school, I remember him telling me that basically he felt college was a waste of money because he didn't see a certain value to it. And because he didn't see that value, he chose not to look at how things may have evolved since I think he was born in 1920. So he would have been in the 1930s, not long during the time of the Great Depression, trying to go and get an education. However, what I did was I said, well, I'm applying only to one school. And if I get into this school, which was the University of Florida, then I'll go to college. If I don't, I'll get a job. And that was my agreement with him. But as fate would have it, I was blessed to get accepted and enjoyed that journey at the Florida Gators.
I don't think you would have, if they didn't accept you, I don't think that would have stuck. uh, knowing you, because again, there's just something that will drive people that's where they belong, that's where they need to be. And then you're going to have those people where college has no interest or pull or motivation for them. And that's not just saying somebody who doesn't want to be, and I want to make sure we don't label people as just people who don't want to be higher educated, right? We know people that have certain skills that says, hey, this is what I like to do. This is what I'm comfortable doing this, and this is my life. I'm going to be a carpenter, and that's it. I'm going to be a mechanic, and that's it. Not that a mechanic doesn't go to school and get training. We're just talking about traditional universities and traditional colleges. And I don't know if that would have stuck with you well. I could see you getting a job at, like Home Depot and just being satisfied.
Well, I think knowing who I am, I would have
Mhm.
probably said, well, I'm here working at this particular
Mhm.
place and I want to move up. And most likely, if I want to move to managerial or any other type of supervisory position,
Yeah.
I would have been tasked to go and get what I needed to get so that I could make that next level move.
Now, Bryce, let's talk about what you talked about, that you could have went to a more affordable college. You don't have to start naming universities, of course, but um, when you say that, do you feel that you would have gotten the same preparation and the same things that you went through, minus Greg, if you had chosen to go to a different university? What makes you feel that you should have went to a more affordable university?
I think that the education would have been very similar. I don't know
Mhm.
if I would have swam because some of the other schools I was looking at were like D1 schools, and I'm not a D1 athlete.
Mhm.
Close,
That
but not
skill
exactly
level.
a D1 athlete.
So I probably wouldn't have swam. Uh, but education wise, for sure, I think I could have gotten what I was looking for um, in the women's studies and social justice field at a more affordable school, for
Well,
sure.
it's funny you say that, because even Greg, let's say you both were D1 athletes. Here's the
Mhm.
thing about scholarships in college. If you don't have the ability and you have the self-awareness that you're not in a sport that has a professional league that can make a substantial amount of money. We know swimmers can go to the Olympics, but that's a whole different ordeal. But
Yeah.
if you're not at that level, then hey, I'm here doing this sport, but my education is my primary goal. Whereas if I'm playing football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and I do have that skill set to go to that bigger level, where I go will more be determined about where I'm playing that sport than the education level on the most part. Now, we know
Yeah.
athletes will still pick colleges for a reason. D1 athletes will still go to Stanford because of the education. So that does play a big part in that.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, what are your goals? Are you doing it for just to get a good return on investment and just make more money outside of college? Are you looking for an experience? Do you want to develop in your sport? Do you want to network? Do you want to build connections? Do you want to, specialize in something? It really depends on the individual's goals, and you have to weigh the pros. You have to weigh the pros and cons of every single college.
I think one of the biggest problems people have, and we kind of talked about it before on the show, is it always comes back to the cost. We know colleges back in the day, they were made for people who could afford to go to college and get that higher education. And then it was opened up more to the masses, which created more of the public universities than the private universities. But even the public universities are not cheap. We also have certain issues, and Harold, you can speak on this, where of African American people who want to go to an HBCU, but they might live in Michigan. Last time I checked, there's no HBCUs in Michigan, right? So, so where do they go? If you live in Nebraska, if you live in certain areas of the country, it may be not affordable for you to travel and go to an HBCU that's 4 or 5 states over, and so you end up going to a college in your hometown. Speak on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, some of the challenges even there, when you're dealing with out of state tuition costs, which sometimes in certain states are 2 to 3 times more than what your in state tuition would be, which creates that affordability issue. And then, yes, you do have limited locations as to where many of these historically black colleges and universities exist. And so, again, trying to get there, and trying to make sure that they also have the accommodations, because even at those institutions, they are also struggling with funding issues.
Mm.
And I think it's been in Tennessee, and I want to say also, one place in the Northeast, and I don't want to call the wrong location, but they've sued their state for withholding funding almost up to $500 million over the last 20 to 30 years. So when you don't have that, you're unable to make sure you can grow at a steady pace to keep up with. But I think also, in addition to this whole idea of value, what I've learned about our institutions is sometimes they don't offer what's needed uh, to develop students and prepare them for the future, for the next century or the next big thing. They don't develop them to create. And if you think about it, when you look at Steve Jobs, when you look at Zuckerberg, when you look at some of these people that have created these major platforms, they all are college dropouts. They may have gone in with a certain intent, but once they got whatever that skill level was that they needed, they wanted, they desired, so that they could utilize it for their own personal gain or to build whatever they're building, they no longer felt that college was necessary to complete to continue with whatever they endeavor to do in the future. So again, when we look at that whole value proposition, it's going to be interesting as to what that value speaks to you versus how it speaks to me.
Really
Yeah.
well said.
I mean, yeah. You,
Uh-oh.
you think about that. What you saw Dave pop up, you say, "Uh-oh,
Welcome.
it's filibuster time." No,
No, stop it.
hey Dave,
No, but
how you doing?
when he was getting ready to chime in, I saw his head shaking,
apparently,
nodding. He was doing all these things.
I really
I'm the
like
only
how
one
you said
who
that.
gets a thing that says 2:00 and decides to join at 2:00.
No, you're
Welcome.
fine. We were
You're on time. Nice and
we had
early.
a time for you and Mark to jump in. We started at 1:30 with Harold, Weenie, and Bryce, and it was planned that way for you and Mark to jump in at 2. But Weenie, go ahead and chime on what Harold was just saying.
Harold, I really like how you said that, like how college doesn't exactly prepare you for the real world. Like college is different than the real world. Real world experience develops your real world experience. But I think if you have that college education as a background, that can supplement your real world experience. But it's completely different than, managing bills, making money, expenses,
Buying a house.
houses, finances, taxes.
So one of the things we just talked about, we talked about the finances of college, and Harold brought up that the out of state tuition and what it costs someone out of state who lives in Idaho but loves the University of Michigan and wants to go to the University of Michigan, or someone who lives outside of the state of Florida that wants to go to Florida. And then we talked about the cost of people that actually live in that state. And you'll get people that will decide for many reasons why that happens. I also think that students should be more prepared on what the finances looks like after college. For instance, financial aid shouldn't just be a department that says, "Hey, this is how much money you're getting." They should actually be counseling the students on, "Hey, this is what these student loans mean. This is what financial aid you're getting. This is what you're obligated to get. This is what you might want to do during these 4 years so that when you get out, you don't have this certain amount of debt versus this amount of debt." Is that me being silly, or does that sound like something that should happen in a financial aid department, Dave?
Well, you tell students a lot of things. and at one level, no. And I do think I think we should listen to what millennials are saying.
Mhm.
That's a generation, they're in their 40s now. And and so these are people like my daughters, my son-in-law, that have this debt, and there are real questions about how it was administered and all of that. And I think, though, I think very much looking at how it's administered, how students are exposed to it, what they're allowed to get, is very much part of the game. The big problem you have is, before we go too far down the road, we're going to begin to paternalism, right? Making choices for people, and so that's a problem. But on the other hand, they are young people. These are, 18. If you are a traditional student going in, you're 18 to 22, and you're 18. Maybe you're 18. You might even be 17 when you're going to college and starting to make the decisions that you will be paying for until it's paid off. Right?
Mhm.
Not forever, but until it's effing paid off.
Maybe
Might
forever.
be maybe forever.
And so those are I think valid concerns.
I mean, he's right until it's paid off. I went through bankruptcy in 2017, and I learned that I sat down and said, "Hey, just to let you know, school loans are the only things we can't put on here." And I'm like, "What is the power of school loans? I can put a house, a car, 12 credit cards, 9 loan companies, but I can't put student loans on the bankruptcy. That is insane." It's crazy to me. One of the things about loans is, so I told everybody I went to school and I focused at 32, but when I first went at 18 and didn't make it through that first year, when I get that loan, you get that paper and it tells you, hey, here is your refund. You don't have to spend it all. If you send this much back, you'll only owe this much. You can't send a broke 18-year-old a $5,200 check and say you don't have to use the money. Like, what sense does that make?
Well,
Yeah, I am
what I
coming in late here. We have covered the fact that statistically, if you get a college degree, you'll make $1.2 million.
No, we haven't gone over that yet. What we've gone over so
That's a
far
good-
is,
Hey, I mean,
point.
well, wait, hold on,
there is
Dave.
that.
Hold on, Dave.
At some point, I'm going
Dave.
to drop that on you, but
Hold on, Dave. What we did go over was Harold gave his educational background before we started the conversation, and Bryce and Weenie went over their brief educational journey, and then we just started talking about the main topic of college work. I was saving statistics for when Mark joined. But
okay,
Dave,
cool.
just
I'll
fill
wait.
everybody
I'll
else. No, you're fine. Just go ahead and fill everybody in on your educational background.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay. All right. Look, I went to a liberal arts college in the 80s, right? Back when it was exorbitantly $13,000 a year, right? Those are the days. And I, to my poor father's chagrin, I passed up repeated opportunities to get the military to pay for it. But a very significant thing about my educational journey is I went to college. I actually got a Naval ROTC scholarship to Duke University. Went to Duke University and said, I've made a horrible mistake. I don't want to do this. So I ripcorded before class even began, gave up a free ride at Duke, went back home. My parents were trying to be supportive. Let's put it that way, which I think is very fair. That's a good thing for them. I was very lucky that I got into a college up, Drew University. Let me give them a shout out. In September, they were willing to take me on, as long as my father was willing to pay the entire thing. There were no loans here, right? Yeah, there was no financial aid. And I went to college. About 2 years, I started studying political science. I really liked that. About 2 years into it, I took up with ROTC in the Army. I joined the National Guard and I went into the Army. And but I didn't want to be a scholarship because I didn't want to commit to going active duty, blah, blah, blah. So my father kept paying. And I did that. And then the key point of that story I want to get at is the difficulty I had coming up with what I wanted to do. I had a plan graduating high school, go into the Navy, go into Duke for electrical engineering, getting a free, I had a great ride. But it was a decision based on an imagined future that I really didn't want. So I needed 2 years at Drew and just kind of experimenting, getting used to myself, being cool, being chill, and getting out of high school. And then I re-engaged with the military in a different capacity. So when I graduated college, I had a plan. I was employed the day after I graduated as Second Lieutenant Hayes, and then in the Army, I didn't, we were making nice with the world. I went to, but I had to get out of the Army basically, because they were, messing around with stuff. And I went and got a PhD because I wanted to teach. And so in my journey, a lot of it, I was constantly getting an education or was involved in an educational program that spit me out into a specific job field. Except at the beginning when people are making those decisions we were just talking about. So, and I got a PhD from University of Rochester, yay. So
That's exciting. PhD.
Oh yeah, I'm a professor, right?
Yeah,
So it's like,
I attempted one of those. I got 3/4 of the way through, and I had no more money left. Dave said he went to school. It was $13,000 for that year. I think that's a semester now.
it's $1982, so
Right. Well, maybe the question evolves from, is college worth it, to, is college worth it for everyone?
absolutely not. That's easy to answer.
So expand upon that, starting with Bryce and Greg. Is college for everyone? Why? Why or why not?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, like what we were already touching on, some people some people leave high school knowing that college is either not for them, is for them, or they're not really sure. So maybe they just go to college because that's what people do when they graduate high school. For those people that know exactly what they want to do, maybe it's go right into the workforce. Maybe they've already started a business when they're in high school, which is cool. I think that's good for them. And they probably don't need to go to college and spend money on that. Otherwise, if you're unsure on what career path you want, maybe college is right for you. If you have a family that's willing to support you, or you're not afraid of taking on loans, then you could probably have your pick at where you want to go. Otherwise, community colleges are a good option, or just staying in state for that in-state tuition. So yeah, I agree. College is not for everyone, especially if you know what you'd like to do with the rest of your life, or at least the next phase in your life.
Yeah, like if you have like a business that's really popping off and you're young and you want to go all in on that business, sure, maybe college isn't for you, at least not right now. So it may not be, right for you right out of high school. That's why we have general education, but maybe you can always go back. I think more education is always better, especially if you can afford it. And if you can't afford it, try to do as much as you can to get scholarships. There's a lot of different scholarship programs that are available. You can type in like essays and stuff like that. And yeah, it really depends on your goals. Like, what kind of job do you want? Do you want to, get a corporate job? Do you want to, work in the trades? Do you want to have your own business? Do you want a mix of them? I think it really depends upon your goals and your finances.
Harold?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it's built for everyone, because I can give an example of a friend of mine. He was one of the ones that recruited me to go to the University of Florida, or to apply. Well, I was accepted right away. He was accepted under condition to go to summer school. That fall and that spring, he didn't take his first year seriously. So he ended up getting suspended for a term. And when he came back, I think he had the right attitude. But see, there are times when you're challenged with that freedom, that liberty to kind of get up and do what you do. And you don't have mom and dad to say, hey, listen, get up, it's 7 o'clock, time to get ready for school when you're in college. So some people need that guidance. Some people need that additional support. to kind of keep them motivated and moving in those spaces. Not only that, but as when he said, Wiener said, I'm sorry, you got to look at Winnie, Wiener. Listen,
Greg, Weenie, Wiener. It's all the same.
yeah, hey, listen, W. I'm gonna call you W. Okay, yo, you BW. That's what you guys are.
Money's good.
But
No, don't say BW. That's Big Wiener.
no, it's not. It's
That's
Bryce.
how I interpreted it.
See, you get out of the gutter.
Hey,
Get out of the
Dave,
gutter. Nope,
Dave
I'm
has a
finishing.
PhD.
That was good.
My point. He
Dave
said
has a PhD and he agreed with me. Okay.
he well listen. I don't even think Dave students listen to him, so stop listening to Dave. But
All good advice.
but no, based on what he was saying, it's not from where basic. It's about your goals. What do you aspire to do? If I'm looking to be an electrician, why am I even thinking about going to college? I don't need to be an electrical engineer to be an electrician. So, college is not going to be the best choice or most economical choice for him, and it wouldn't make sense. So it's not built for everyone. Some people are vocational. And now with the current technological advancements, college is almost an afterthought for a large percentage of young people coming up nowadays because they can do a whole lot online. They can do it a whole lot at their own pace. And not only that, they're creating their own spaces where they're generating monies, on the side. And sometimes that side hustle will end up making more paper than if they spent money to go to college and then later on tried to recoup that. So that's my 3 cents.
Well, Dave, he said something about vocational. There are more vocational high schools than ever, and a lot of regular high schools have so many more vocational classes. In the high school. Remember when we were in high school? We're old. I don't know, Weenie. Did you guys have wood shop when you were
in high school? Yes, not in college. But,
okay, so you're not. No, not in college. And I know a lot of.
I would have liked to have taken wood shop.
High schools don't have the same subjects that they used to have when we came up, but there's a lot more vocational schools at the high school level than there were, when I was a kid or when Harold and Dave were a kid. Dave, I know you have a short answer. You want to expand on that, or we're just going to keep that short answer? I'm fine with either one.
No, because it's a significant. It goes to your. I think the big point that you can't say college, right? Like I can come out and I give you statistics. You're gonna make $1.2 million more. By the statistics, people that have a 4-year degree make 1.2 million more this is a calculation back in 2021 by Forbes or data shared by Forbes. But that's a trend. I thought it was another interesting statistic is 16% of people with high school degrees made more than the median of what college graduates did. So there are 16% of the people who only have a high school degree, which is nowadays everybody, 94% of people have a high school degree. So that's just a baseline. Mm-hmm. But 16% can get into the upper half of the college educated thing. So, but that's still, that's not that's 1 in 5. That's not bad odds, especially those people are very clearly going to be people with technical training, right? And so you can get it, or it can be people who start, if you start a landscaping company. I have a guy from high school who didn't go to college, which was weird in my town. But next thing you know, there are all these trucks with his name on them all over Glen Ridge, New Jersey, and he's making big bank. However, remember, half of businesses don't survive 5 years, right? So there's a lot of variation there. I think, though, the thing is that by the way, be a truck driver, right? Get your CDL. If you're any way decent at it, Walmart is advertising that they're going to start people at $90,000. The average truck driver makes $60,000 a year, which is what the average person with a college degree makes. So but you have to be a truck driver, right?
It's a tough job.
It's a tough job. So those are the trade-offs, and like I say, the thing is that when you're 18, to make forward-looking decisions, big forward-looking decisions, is really weird, and difficult for people to do. But so I think it's going to be a process. It's going to be very idiosyncratic. I think we have community colleges where you can start your path, and I would say there might be kind of a Moneyball strategy. Like if you're not going to go whole hog into the 4 years, which more and more people are doing, and becoming a rite of passage in certain groups. But start going with the Moneyball thing of like, well, I'm going to go to school. Let me bank a little education as I'm going along. Harold mentioned there are too many opportunities to get to school, so that someday if you decide, hey, I need a bachelor's degree, you're not facing down 4 years of school. If you've got an associate's degree from, and you can go to if you go to a lot of in the States, if you get an associate's degree from a state community college, that will be half your bachelor's degree at that state, right? And so you can start banking your credits, and you can start getting it so that the day comes you want to go maybe have your college experience, maybe it's shorter and you've already got some of it. So those are some ideas there.
Awesome, Dave. And Mark has joined us. Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Hello.
Mark, can you go ahead and give us a brief background of your education?
Yeah, I heard Dave giving his a while ago. My story is first generation college student. My parents did not go to college. And so I followed the track that most folks in my peer group in high school did. That's going to college. Plus, I wanted to. And I started off at a junior college because it was affordable. They were called junior colleges in Georgia in that day. And then on to the University of Georgia for a bachelor's degree in recreation and leisure services. That's a long story how I got there, basically because I couldn't really focus on anything else. And then started working in the criminal justice system as a prison recreation supervisor and probation officer. And while I was working as a probation officer, I went back to Georgia State and got a master's in criminal justice, my first foray into criminal justice study. And then a couple of years later, long story short, pursued a PhD at Sam Houston State University. So I got my PhD back in the early 90s or something like that, mid 90s. So that's my educational pedigree. And do you want me to go ahead and start giving my lofty opinions now, or do you want to ask me questions?
not lofty opinion. One thing that always it's not funny, but I know so many people that go to college and get a degree and never work in the field of what they got the degree in.
I think I might get in a little trouble here if people watch this, but I think in some fields, I think that's a problem. I'm thinking of my field, where it used to be in my field that the people who went into the academic arena were people who had been in the field of criminal justice, be it law enforcement or corrections or something else. And that's increasingly not the case anymore. I don't know how it is in other fields. I don't know how it is in business or education or social work or things like that. But it just, now there's a danger, because you can have people that bring their experience into the academic realm, and they can rely too much on it and kind of just have a career telling war stories or just seeing things from a very myopic view. And naturally, I don't think I have that problem, because I can't judge myself.
I think, can someone talk on forecasting? I think forecasting is a good thing to do when you're deciding what career you want to do. They have a thing where you do the research and find out what jobs will be eliminated or downsizing over a certain period of time, and what careers will be expanding over a certain period of time. I know Cello, who's a doctor, always says when he has people that are deciding to go to medical school, they look at what's going on now. And they, like, for instance, in the 80s, he said they recognized that people were going to start being obese. So a lot of doctors got into that field. Right now, it's technology, it's cell phone. He said there's so many people that are doing chiropractics or learning spinal cord and all of that, because we're all going to have this problem in the future where our necks are killing us.
I know. I can't help but kind of straighten up as you say that.
So forecasting. Let's talk about trying to forecast your future when
Well,
you're
I think
picking
that's a good
your.
idea, John. If I may, except only one thing though.
Mhm.
It's one thing to go into a major or an occupation because you think that it's a fertile field for jobs and so forth, but it must be something you enjoy. One mistake I made is I was told, look, go study business because business is where the jobs are. That's where the money is, and that's true. And business is a worthwhile endeavor, but it just was not for me. And so, but you have to also live with your choices. If you go get a degree in something that you like but doesn't pay very well, or there aren't many jobs available, you have to live with that. But you must do something that you enjoy. You must do something you like.
Let's get Harold because I know Harold's going to go soon. Harold, go ahead and talk about what we were just talking about.
Well, again, when you look at again college, is it worthwhile? What could we do and what should we do? Again, that whole valuation proposition is interesting because again, it means different things to different people. And as we look around, and I reflect on even my college experience. If you told me 20 years from you getting out of college, 30 years from you getting out of college, that people are going to be social media influencers, and no college was ready really to prepare anyone for that particular, i.e., career, because just like with acting and some of the other, artistries that we have here in the entertainment industry, there's no college that can actually prepare you to be a celebrity or a superstar, or even really help you develop your craft to the point to where you might be recognized as a Whitney Houston, who's one of the best vocalists to ever sing, or some of the best, musicians that we have out there. So I think when we look at, again, this whole thing with college and trying to figure out what's best for said individual or individuals, that's something that they're going to have to do a lot of soul searching to make that determination. And then as we move forward, we can only hope and pray that these institutions will catch up to where we are in society at. Even when I look back, just taking it back to K-12, K-12 is almost a decade behind where it should be in preparing young minds for college. However, now colleges have to kind of build upon that, the foundation that they're receiving, to propel these students and prepare these students for the next iteration of whatever we're going to experience moving forward. So with that, I know I gotta step away and step down so that I can get to my next gig, which is picking up my daughter from school. But it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. So you guys
Well
take care.
said, Harold. Well said.
Not my next gig.
Take care, Harold.
Oh my
Take care.
God.
God bless.
What do we do with because that negative connotation that people will place on you when you're not college educated, right? Yeah, look at the face that Weenie just made, and I don't know if everybody gets where I'm going with that, but
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Dave, ironically, we haven't heard from you in a minute.
There are other people here. I have to let them talk.
No, but go ahead.
I will say just one thing. I will follow up on the forecasting. There is a guy. I actually went and got this book, Strategy, because I teach strategy, and Lawrence Friedman is a scholar of it. And a lot of times when you say, okay, and we're talking about like war, like how does this end? And there's the idea of, do you plan it out to, do you just plan your life out? And a lot of people want you to do this, right? Financial planners, they want you to be planning your contributions so that you have enough money to retire at a certain age, right? So they got you planning this stuff all the way out. And a lot of times with strategy, we think in terms of, all right, you need every step of the plan. Friedman talks about, he says, look, a lot of times strategic thinking is about moving yourself or your country or your military into a position where better options are available, and thinking about, where is this going to put me in the future to make choices that will get me to the end I'm achieving. So maybe I can't draw a line. Maybe I can't tell a complete story in the future tense, as he calls it, about every step of the way. But I can tell you a story that when I get done with these steps I'm about to take, I'm going to be in a better position to move forward and do the things I want to do. And that to me has really resonated, and I've been thinking about that a lot since I read him. So that's that book learning for you. Comes in handy. That's what we do. The thing about it though is I think that's something. But your immediate question that you wanted to ask me was, before I went off on this planning tangent, remind me, because I'm old. I'm getting close to the end of the game.
Oh my God.
It's almost over for me.
That's
We're
okay.
just getting started.
I'm
We're just getting started.
winding down. I'm coming in for a landing, right? I'm going to die.
Oh,
No, seriously. I'm seriously asking you, what the hell
Yeah,
you were
what was the
What's the
question?
question?
I don't know either.
we were talking about forecasting. If you are
I went back
unsure,
to forecasting. But
yeah, of what you want to do for college, is it a great idea to look at jobs that are trending upwards and jobs that are trending? Because you got to remember, like how things change. Who uses a travel agent anymore?
Oh yeah.
Remember when you used to have to use a travel agent? I know Weenie and Bryce probably like, what? Yeah, you used to have to use a travel agent to book your flights and go everywhere. And
think about my big fat Greek wedding, right? Because that was what Lula was doing, or Tula was doing, the main character, right? She had a plan that got her to be a travel agent. She had a short range plan, right? Learn these things and get in this position. And that got her to a step. And so I'm just saying, like, look, this is the Moneyball thing. Get on base, right? That's what I mean when I say Moneyball, right? In Moneyball, they were like, look, don't be looking to be Whitney Houston. Don't be, although that can be fine, if you've got that in you. And but if you're trying to do it, get to a better place to make better decisions, and along the way, be banking skills or education that could go in a different direction, because you don't know what the future is. You don't know in 20 years what you're going to do. Actually, when I graduated Drew, we had a guy who wrote a book, De Tocqueville in America, and his message to us as 1982 little budding people in the year of Reagan, and his message to us was, I graduated with this engineering degree, applied engineering, and Texas Instruments, a few years after I graduated, Texas Instruments came out with a calculator that did everything I did for $100, which even back then, and he said, you don't know what you're going to do in the future. And so his message to us was, be prepared to fail and be prepared for big changes. And so maybe I'll just pass that on. God, 82, how many years ago was that?
time keeps them moving, right?
By the way, my $13,000 a year college would be $40,000 a year today.
Wow.
I looked at
Keone, if I may, because this is something I sent to the group before we went on, and I know we usually, this is usually an all male cast. We have a female guest this time as well. But what colleges are struggling with is what's happening to men not choosing to go to college.
Oh yeah,
That's the demographic that's falling off, and there's no real explanation for that. Why men are not? That some are saying, well, because it's not worth it, because they can get a job and so forth. Or perhaps the other question is, well, why are more women going, or why are men not going? But men are not going to college in the numbers they used to go. It's been trending that way for several decades, but there's something kind of weird in the culture. I don't know how to explain it myself.
I saw that article that you sent from Newsweek. It says, why so many young men are abandoning college degrees. A large number of men are foregoing college, leading to a gap between university-educated men and women, a new study has found.
Yeah. And there are plenty of other studies out there and research polls, like the Pew Research Center, for example, finds the same thing. And it's been trending for quite some time. And I know this is just an anecdotal example from my own life, but I'm planning a study abroad program for May of this year to Amsterdam and London. And at this point, I have 16 females signed up and one male.
Well, I'm going to tell you my opinion on why that happens. Number one, it has to do, I think everything has to still do with the financial negative implications that people keep hearing about after college. And if you're looking at especially young men who have started creating families before they went to college, it might be more suited for them to get into something where they're making money immediately instead of spending 4 years in college. I know not just now, one of the downfalls of a lot of people where I lived was, they had babies at 18 and 19 and 20 years old. Once you have two kids at 20, you may not have time to go to college. You might have to get a job and start making money and support your family. I don't think that's the biggest reason, but I know that could be part of it as well when it comes to young people who have families. Dave, what do you think? I know you haven't read the article, but based on what Mark is talking about, well, maybe you have. You read everything.
This is the thing that's been happening. Women, it used to be that college was part of the patriarchy, and a means by which men got credentials, and it's always been a huge part of the wage gap, right, between men and women. That again, something I've been studying for a long time. And things have changed though, right? And whereas it used to be one of the explanations, big part of the wage gap was, well, men have a higher educational attainment than women, because for a long time, women underinvested in their education. Now we're seeing, well, that's clearly no longer the case. Only 41% of something, it's like that. It's like a 60-40 mix. So there's a lot more women going to college and taking these things, and that could be a factor of the different inclinations of the genders, the different attitudes, different opportunities. Men young men may be going out and laboring, using seeking technical, vocational skills more. I think we would really need some deep dive into it. It is going to be a thing that is going to eventually work away on that wage gap quite a bit and empower women, and so it's maybe a good thing. You do have to keep in mind when we say 60-40, remember this is 60-40 of a percentage going to college, right? There are a lot of women who aren't going to college, and so that number sounds big and scary. But it may not be that big, but it certainly is going to lead to reduced. On average, it's going to lead to reduced money for men unless they get their ass back into school. However, a lot of if you set up a landscaping business and you do well, there you go.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to risk. Men like to take on more risk, and that comes with.
I'm glad you said
businesses.
That. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's not anecdotal, Mark. When I was at college with Bryce, it was 60% women, 40% male. Now I think it's over 70% female at Hamlin. I'd have to double check the statistics, but it's interesting too from even like a dating market perspective. I think I attribute our relationship success because there's just more women to, meet and stuff like that. So
wait a minute, that sounds backwards.
I might have phrased that.
Wouldn't the dating success be better if there were less women?
Off the rails. It was
too many men in college. Yeah. I don't know if we would have met because
gotcha.
Man mechanics.
I want to jump in and save Greg.
Save me, Mark.
He's starting to dig himself a hole there, big guy.
Okay, so Dave,
preliminary, and then the relationship builds.
They dated in college. They're now engaged. Weenie is new at this, so he doesn't always know the things.
I
tell it like it is.
I love you.
But see, I don't really have the answer, and I think all of what you guys said about risk taking, about getting that job with a landscaper, etc. I think there's some validity to all of that. But I think, and I don't know why, but I think that not only are women going to college in greater numbers, I don't know if the data backs this up, but I bet it does. I think women are achieving more in college than men. Well, I bet if you look at honors colleges, I bet I taught an honors course some years back. There were like 15 women and like 2 men.
Listen,
And of course, women have always kind of outpaced men or been equal at least in some disciplines. But I don't know where things are, say, with the traditional male things like business and the natural sciences and medicine. Women are catching up there too.
well,
Um,
I don't know what the reason for there. I mean, I've said this being a person that's been in a managerial position at every job since he was 20. If I have my choice between a female and a male in any managerial type of role, and they were both equally efficient, I always did better, had better output from the female. But I want to ask this question to Bryce, since she's the only female on here. I think a part of that also is the way females are raised more these days. And Bryce, you can tell me how you were raised, because when I was growing up, it was still, I'm not the age of David and Mark, but it was still, hey, go to high school, graduate, find a man, start a family. It wasn't get a career, learn how to do this, be independent, do all of those things. So, Bryce, I think that has a big thing to do with why more women go to college now than ever. You let me know how you feel about that and what your standpoint is.
Yeah, I was raised in a household with two moms, so I'd never had
Ah,
like a male figure really
mhm.
in the household. Um,
Yeah, there's no
so
father.
yeah, there was no father. So I do think I was raised to be more independent. I can't say that's the same for other women and girls, but I do think maybe society is maybe shifting to where women aren't looking for just a man to marry. They're looking for a career.
Yeah,
Oh,
talk
path.
about your friends that graduated from college.
Well, hold
What
on,
did they
wait.
go
I
for?
want to touch on something she just said first, because you heard it here on the conversation. You mean to tell me you were raised by people of the same gender and you didn't turn out like a serial killer or chopping off horse heads? You're a contributing member of society. That's a novel concept. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm
I'm
a, I'm a
sorry. I just
coach. I'm working with kids.
Go ahead. What Greg was pressuring you into talking about?
You were asking me what my
Yeah,
friends are doing.
what are your friends doing, both in terms of jobs and in terms of relationships?
Well, I think all of my high school friends, I think out of the
The female
five
friends.
that I had, they were all girls. Two of them are in relationships, and the other three are single.
Do
I
they,
know I know one is she's doing like rocket science, I think, for
Mhm.
NASA.
oh,
The other one's like an editor for an online forum or an online paper. Um, One is going for her master's, and the other one works in pharmacy, I think.
So you guys all kind of
So,
migrated together and have kind of those same successful paths. I always adore, like, I see two types of couples. I see the couple where the guy is a businessman and he has a housewife, or I look at Dave. Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong. You and Lori are both highly educated.
Um,
I would
I
say that.
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
I am, and I don't know how much I want to speak for Lori here, but Lori
Why do
had
you think she was a teacher?
well, she was a speech language pathology assistant.
Oh yes, that okay. There we go.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah, thank you for bringing this up because we've never, it doesn't come up in our life, but when you were saying, uh, about people who don't have bachelor's degrees,
Hmm.
Lori doesn't. My grandmother on one side, my father's mother didn't, and always felt bad about it. Lori doesn't feel bad about it, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not living in a university town where there might be people who would be assholes about it, and I'm not. I'm a distant faculty, so I don't expose her to that.
Yeah, that's always a great thing. We know how communities can be, no matter what they are. right? And that goes back to that thing I mentioned earlier about the negative connotation of when you say someone is not college educated, as if someone cannot be successful if they are not college educated. I will say one thing: I can tell sometimes when I'm talking to people about, I don't know where that accent just came out, why I said talking, but while I'm talking
Watching The Sopranos or something.
when I'm talking to people about certain topics, I can tell who's been to college sometimes and who hasn't just by the way they respond and the nuance that they bring. And that doesn't mean no one, if you haven't been to college, you can't. But so a lot of times I can tell a college educated person just by their perspective on certain topics. I can tell they've been, and not just college educated, maybe they were in the military or in some job capacity where they have been exposed to different people who think differently, that as opposed to someone who's only been around people who think the way they think.
It could be.
Yeah. You definitely want to hang out with a diverse set of people and really talk with them, because then you broaden your perspectives. I think you're going to be less ignorant if you do that. And yeah, it's just a college degree is just one aspect of a person, a tiny aspect. Mm-hmm. Some people make it their entire identity, and some people it's a small part of their life.
But it's also people's college experiences differ. I mean, for some people, and there's nothing wrong with going to a college near where you live. In fact, I recommend that. Most people can't handle moving far away from home when they're 18 or 20 years old. But very, very often, though, people go to college, and it's really just an extension of high school. They're around people that were maybe a different set of people slightly, but it's pretty much the same continuation there.
Well, that was my problem, Mark.
That's part of college's problem too. They treat it too much like high school.
That was my problem, Mark, when I failed at college when I first went at 18 versus 32. When I went to the community college, I hung around the same knuckleheads I was hanging around when I was in high school, and I didn't take it seriously. So I think the best part was me kind of going away there. Well, hey, so how do you guys, Mark and Dave, because you're the only college professors on here, when you have a student who is trying to study what you guys teach, what am I doing? What am I turning into? Someone who is going, and I'm trying to ask this question appropriately. It's not coming out of my head correctly. Someone who's getting into the career or, taking the courses that you guys teach, how are you mentoring them to what to expect when they get out of here? Like if I wanted to be I go, Dave, I want to be a political scientist. I want to study political science. What are the questions you ask me? And how do you prepare?
First question I ask is why? Why are you attracted to this? Mm-hmm. And if they tell me that if they get attracted to criminal justice from watching CSI or some law show or something like that, I say fine. I mean, because you can't help but be attracted to something that's entertaining like that. You just have to realize that's fantasy, not reality.
Yeah.
And I think we have an increasing number of people who really don't know what the reality of our field is because they never worked in it. They never worked outside the academy. So all I can do is just tell them what I know from my own experience. And then, although people decry book learning and say it's not preparation for the real world, it is preparation somewhat. Yeah. But I think a healthy thing somebody can do is to do an internship or a practicum in their major, because there are ways of going about that and not investing too much. But sometimes people get into an internship and say a law office or something like that and say, look, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. I don't want to go to law school anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. So some kind of practical experience, whether it's a part-time summer internship or some kind of volunteer work. But I've known people that have gone all the way and gotten a master's degree in criminal justice and have never set foot inside a criminal justice agency. How do you know you want to do that? And you've already got a master's degree, all this time and money invested, and then you decide it's something you don't want to do.
It's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that before I go to Dave, because the last three friends of mine that wanted to study criminal justice, I had a talent of mine. She said, I want to be in criminal justice. I said, why? She goes, because I love CSI, and the other one loves forensic files. And I'm like, okay.
That is the entire reason, Keone, that we created a forensic science minor, a forensic science certificate. for the sole reason, that very reason, because the admissions office was coming to us and saying that people were coming to admissions asking about criminal justice because of those 2 TV programs. And I don't teach in that; it's not my area. But we have people that teach in that, and that's the sole reason that was created, was in response to CSI. It's a similar thing happened back in the 90s, and it's still going on to some, maybe the 80s, I'm not sure, when LA Law was very popular TV show. Requests for admissions to law schools skyrocketed because of LA Law.
All right, Dave.
Well, I teach non-traditional students. So I teach people, half of my students are in the military, and so they've got a career. And when they ask me things, I always say, look, when they ask me what they should do, a lot of times they'll say, oh, I wanted, they're getting a master's degree in international relations. I want to do the next step. I want to get a PhD. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, you don't want to be like me. Do not be like me. It's too late for me. And I tell them, I say, look, what do you want to do? A PhD is, I teach, right? And so I have to work for a university, and there's too many of us. And so I tell them, I say, look, what kind of job do you actually want? And, where do you want to work? And I say, look, the next step after you get a master's degree with me is not to get the next higher level of the same degree. It may be to get a degree in another area.
Yeah.
And so I tell them a just killer combination is to have a master's degree in international relations and a law degree. Wow. When you do that, you have so many job opportunities in so many areas, because so much of the world is international and so much of everything deals with legal issues. And so I have to ask them, what do you want to do? And where do you want to go? And then what are your, and we kind of talk through what their skills are. Sometimes they take classes to credential their work experience, right? And I always said to people who were in the military, I say, a great thing about our program, not to make this a commercial about it, but a lot of people in the military that you, Keone, know this, you go overseas, and especially during the counterinsurgency, you go and you're dealing with other people. You aren't shooting people. You are talking to them, dealing with them, and maybe it's not, maybe it's people from other nations that you're allies with, right? You're getting a lot of experience in management, in international and intercultural environments. If you're special forces, that's your bread and butter, but people don't know that. And I would say sometimes you're, taking a degree that bolsters that, credentials those aspects, and underlies it. So this is the kind of thing I talk about with students, to figure out what they need, what the next step for them would be. And I'm basically always punting it back to them, like, it depends. Well, it depends, But
Yeah, you have to.
I never advise people to follow my path. I am not a role model. I'm a mentor, not a role model.
Well, speaking of following your path, we're going to follow your path into Dave's Ukraine update.
Oh, wow. We're doing that? Cool.
All right, Dave, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Well, there's just been a lot happening in Ukraine. And so, just bottom line up front, we've had fighting in Avdiivka, right? Avdiivka is the new Bakhmut. And so we're getting into, the Ukrainians are a spot of bother. The Russians are pushing very heavily on that city, that it makes absolutely no difference to anybody except, of course, the people in Avdiivka and the people who are giving their lives one side or the other over it. For the war, this is another Bakhmut. It's not going to make a big deal, but that is where the fighting is going. And the Russians have recently, they found a tunnel that went into the Ukrainian rear area, and they snuck some people in, and they've been encroaching around the sides. and this is a city that they haven't moved the front line here since the beginning of the war, and they're just about to get. So we're going to see a lot of that. That's where a lot of the fighting is. Meanwhile, Zelensky has replaced the head of the Ukrainian military. He took General Zaluzhny and said, "Thank you very much. You're a hero of Ukraine. We're going in a different direction. Here we got this guy Spassky." Spassky has been the commander. I think I'm on the fly saying that name correctly. He is been the commander of the ground forces, and he has he took back Kharkiv, and he has a reputation. They call him the meat grinder. Some people call him the butcher, and so a lot of Ukrainians were. Especially the soldiers were worried that this is a guy who's willing to spend lives to take objectives, and they were worried about that. However, he has come out and said, look, in the short run, we're not going on the offensive. The offensive, we're going to hold in defensive positions and attrite the Russians. We're going to use the advantages of defense to attrite the Russians at a greater rate. So he doesn't sound like he is, in fact, going to be a butcher. And all the while, the Ukrainians are going next level. They're sea babies. I don't know if you've heard this term. The Ukrainian sea babies are these seagoing, these boats. They're drones, they're boats, and they base them off of jet ski motors and stuff. And they go out and they blow up ships. And they send like 5 or 6 of these things out. And they just last night blew up another Russian ship that was bringing ammunition up through the Black Sea to the front. They are, they're constantly doing something new, right? They're either shooting down a plane that no one thought they could shoot down. They're not too long ago, we had 2 Bradleys take out a T-90. And so the Ukrainians are doing that, and I think that goes with Seversky. Wow, I really should have written that guy's name down. With new commander's goal of, I think he's like, we're going to solidify the line. We're not going to try a positional war, but we're going to attrite these guys with these weapons over the winter. We'll see what happens in the spring. F-16s are coming. The F-16s we're starting to get pictures of the F-16s that are being given to Ukraine. They're doing final training in Europe. So the F-16s are coming, and that could be a game changer. They recently got the ground launch small diameter bombs. This is just another technological tool. It's a missile that shoots 150 miles, 150 kilometers. I wish it was 150 miles, 150 kilometers. And so all of that is, continuing to happen, but the cloud over everything is the aid. Are they going to get aid from the U.S.? They're getting aid from Europe. Europe is going to aid them, but the U.S. aid is the big cloud over everything that I think, is going to, Putin will never stop the war. He will never negotiate. He will never think about stopping as long as he thinks he's got the chance for the U.S. to withdraw its support, right? And so he, in the short run, don't look for Putin to change strategy at all. He's waiting to see what happens. And Trump is certainly signaling to him that he's going to be, just as unhinged as more than before, and going to destroy NATO. He's certainly talking in a way that seems designed to just freak out NATO even before he's elected. And so I think that's happening. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians, they're in a position where they're not about to lose. I mean, they may lose Avdiivka over the next few days, but that doesn't mean much. It's a pocket in the front lines now, and the Russians are, if they continue, Bakhmut, Marenko, Avdiivka, if they keep at this rate, they might achieve their goal of taking all of Donetsk province before I die. Maybe, I mean, seriously, this is years. The rate they're going, it would be years and years before they make any significant ground gains. They're just taking meters at a time. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting to see the funding. We're waiting to see what trick the Ukrainians pull out of their bag of tricks next, and what innovations they come up with. And we are waiting to see what the new guy does in terms of you know. And one last thing, especially the new guys being, hey, we're going to be on the defensive. We're going to be thrifty with our lives. Ukraine is about, and I think they may have already passed the law. They are working on actually mobilizing. What Ukraine has not done till now, they have not drafted anybody. They have not said, we need everybody get in here. They've been going off of volunteers, and they've now gotten all the volunteers are going to get, and they are now going to start drafting people into their military. It's mobilization, they're calling it. And so they're going to be bringing in new waves of troops, of recruits, but they are going to have to train them. And so that could also be part of their defensive thing is, hey, look, we need time. We're not going to put people in the front lines who aren't trained, because we see how much better our guys are than the Russian troops, who are continuing to be just used as cannon fodder. And so we're also seeing this mobilization coming. So that's the Ukraine update. I don't know how long I took. I hope that was good.
That was very good. Very good.
Lightheaded after.
That was great. Me and Mark are used to that terrible Weenies Weekly market update, so that was a breath of fresh
Why
air.
are you on this guy? I like this guy.
No, I love Weenie. Hey, listen, Dave.
All the time.
Dave, there's no secret in life. When you mess with somebody, that means you like them. If you don't like somebody, you don't bother them.
You're always nice to me.
Well, that's because I was taught to be, respectful of my elders.
Yeah, go with that.
Plus, I'm in North Carolina. I can't be rude to you in public. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Hey, everybody, tonight, well, actually not tonight, at 3 p.m., which is in about 6 minutes, On the Count with Pedro Lugo. Prison stories from Valentine's Day. How do prisons operate during these weird type of holidays? With guest World's Strongest Man, been on Walker, Texas Ranger, former inmate turned megastar, big Hollywood James Henderson. And then at 7:30 tonight, you can catch Mark live on Crime Chronicles, because we will be doing Wyatt. I almost said Wyatt Earp. I almost said Wyatt Earp. Mark, tell them who we're doing at 7:30 tonight.
Wyatt Outlaw was what you, and this was a case. It's not very well known outside North Carolina. It happened in 1870 during the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. Wyatt Outlaw was a constable, Alamance County, Gray of North Carolina, in the Piedmont, who was, I won't tell everything, but basically it's a horrible story. He was lynched by Ku Kluxers. And notice I didn't say KKK or the KKK. One thing we'll look at is how the KKK was so-called organized back during the Reconstruction era, and their role in this very, very bad crime.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Dave, thank you for your time. Bryce, thank you for your time. Greg, thank you for your time. Join us at the end of the month for another episode of The Conversation. Everybody, enjoy your Valentine's Day.
Take care.
Peace.